get rolling. So, welcome everybody. It's great to have you all here today. If you've come to these sessions before, you might see some familiar slides. We're going to do a couple of tech overview things and then kind of some reminders about CMC resources, go into detail on the tech recruiting timeline specifically, and then we will finish off with, which is what is probably the most important part, our panel of current students who are going to share all of their best tips and words of wisdom for you all to learn from today. So this is another slide I'm sure many of you have seen. Just want to remind you who our CMC team is. My name is Kathleen Rawl, and I'm one of the MBA coaches. And I work specifically with MBAs who are interested in marketing and tech. And I believe my colleague Heather Yaki is joining us today as well. And she is on the employer relations side. She is the lead contact for our tech employers. So, and then between all of the other MBA coaches, I think I added up the numbers last week, and I think it's almost like 60 years of experience between Emily, Sandy, Courtney, and Heather, who have been here quite a long time. So we have a wealth of knowledge and information that we're excited to share with you. Can't wait to welcome you to campus in a few weeks. So this is our MBA team, and hopefully you'll get to meet all of us when you arrive on campus, if not before. And these are our lovely panelists who are going to be helping us out at the end of a few slides here, who are both members of the class of 2024 and are working, doing their summer internships at Google and Amazon respectively. And I can't wait to hear all the good things that they're going to share with you all today. So, so just to kind of kick us off and kind of bring all of this to focus a little bit, thinking about tech in a big picture. It's a very big umbrella, but something that's important if you're thinking about tech, and many of you are if you're here today, is being a little bit more specific. Tech touches a lot of different things, and there's a lot of different functional areas, but it's really helpful for you as the student who is recruiting and the job searcher to kind of think strategically about the functional roles that you would like to go into or that you're best suited for, or that are that match closely with the skills that you have. So, you know, I'm going to walk through a couple of specific role examples, but it's important to think about a lot of different options on here. So you could be working in strategy or ops or finance, business development, some more technical roles for those of you with more experience, perhaps program manager, product manager, and then also, you know, within tech and other industries would be some leadership development programs, which are more rotational programs that are geared for MBA students who are wanting to have a little bit of experience and kind of dabble in multiple areas and really find the right fit. So as you're looking at roles and as you're looking at companies, start to think about which of these functional areas might be a great fit for you. This is all part of that career exploration process to know which ones would be a good fit for you and the skills that you bring to the table. There are also many more than this, but this is just kind of the big picture. So some of these are a little bit obvious, right? But hopefully you'll leave today and kind of have a better understanding of some of the big themes that are needed for people to excel in tech. Do you have to have direct experience working in tech? No, not necessarily. It certainly helps if you do. But more importantly, almost, I think would be just energy and excitement about working in the industry. So if that's something that you're really passionate about, hopefully that will come through in your conversations and in your interviews, in your networking. So that's something you don't have to be an expert necessarily, but an interest, a keen interest is very important. Being comfortable with data and analytics is also crucial. That's going to be tested on the front end with interview processes. You know, we have a lot of students who transition into tech from other unrelated industries. We have students in the past who have transitioned from, you know, engineering or sales or education even. So it's important to know that many people can break into this field, but you need to be thinking about what skills are needed and what skills you have and how you might be a match. So innovation, creativity, flexibility, tech changes very quickly, and you need to be ready to be able to do that. If you're not comfortable working in that sort of environment, maybe tech is not the best spot for you because things are very quick to turn in the industry. And then also just ambiguity, right? There's a lot of uncertainty, and that's something that you need to be comfortable and kind of own and know how to work in that space, because that's certainly a theme that you'll see in many of these roles. Crucial as well would be great communication skills, especially in some of these roles that we'll delve into next. You'll need to be working on a lot of different teams and being able to communicate effectively with both the sales team and the engineering side of the house and many other teams. And so that's, if you're not able to do that, then you will have a hard time being successful in some of these roles. And then, of course, collaboration, being able to, like I said, work amongst many different teams cross-functionally. And so that's something that should shine through pretty clearly on your resume and your past experiences. So I just want to, there's a lot of text on these next couple of slides, but I do want to kind of point out, a couple of examples of position descriptions that we pulled from, just a variety of sources, just so that you can kind of get an idea for some themes again. So want you to be able to see that this is a program manager's position specifically, which if you think about program management, it would be kind of thinking about how are we going to get X product effectively and efficiently sold throughout this market, whatever that market may be. And a product manager then would be, how are we going to take X product and look at it and see what parts of it we can change or make better to improve. So I think with all of these positions, you'll see several themes that kind of repeat themselves. So being able to kind of look at program management skills and strategically plan. I kind of pulled out some of the quotes and put them on the right. So working well with stakeholders. So that goes back to that communication and teamwork, and the ability to analyze large data sets and complex patterns, business solutions, addressing problems. These are all important things that are kind of across the industry. Strong project management skills and being able to deal in a fast-paced environment, ambiguity, and then excellent written and verbal communication skills. So these are all themes that I think you'll see again on this product manager position description. So here we have it again, working cross-functionally, connecting business and technical worlds, guiding products through the cycle. So analyzing, positioning, promoting, working towards solutions, and then driving strategy, developing solutions, all kind of obvious themes, I think, thinking about what the various teams that you would be working with if you're the product manager and managing that process. Another example here would be product PM tech roles. So maybe something to think about that would be a little bit different on the PM tech side would be some of these positions have a little bit more experience listed. So you might see, I think this one has maybe 5+ years of software management experience. So you might see more technical skills that are emphasized in these kinds of position descriptions, but also many similar repeated skills that we've been talking about, right? So being able to work with in ambiguity, analytical talent, communications, partnering with technical and non-technical stakeholders, prioritizing, working on teams, strategic vision. These are all things that are very important if you want to be working in tech. And the reason why we're pointing this out now is that we, as you're going through this kind of career exploration phase, we want you to be thinking, do I have the skills that employers and recruiters are looking for to be successful? If not, how am I going to add those to my resume between now and the time that I apply? So this is a really important thing that you can do now to start to think about these things and how you might fit in and how you might stand out among the stack of candidates. So the fact that you're here and thinking about these things is great, and we're really happy about that. So Heather, is Heather on this call? I cannot remember if she's joined us. Okay. Heather is not here. Heather was going to share a little bit more detail about the recruiting timeline. And I think I'm going to wait for her to join, or I'm actually going to have our panelists kind of talk specifically about their timeline. So we're going to skip over this slide for now, and we'll let our panelists kind of share their details. So here's a couple of examples of tech companies that our students have done their internships with in the past. If you haven't explored in 1220, I would encourage you to do so. There's a great spreadsheet that you can download that shows the last 5 years of Owen full-time and internship hires, and you can filter that by function and industry. So you can take a look at, the companies, and if there might be some on there that you're not familiar with. There might be some that you're really familiar with, but I think that's a great way to start to see what types of roles Owen students have gone into in the past couple of years. So, and I see Heather has just joined. Heather, you're just in time. Do you want to talk a little bit about, not to put you on the spot when you're probably just hopping on from another call, but Heather, would you like to share a little bit about the tech recruiting timeline? Since you're
Absolutely, and I apologize if anyone is looking closely at the screen. If you see any green, I was finishing up my salad. I'm in a different time zone. Hopefully that never doesn't happen to you over the course of 2 years of school. It probably will. So I feel you in that moment. And apologize that my presence was not here earlier. So as we talk about tech recruiting, I think as Kathleen likely mentioned, we'll be talking about there are national career fairs. There are different ways that tech engages throughout the year. If you've been on teams, you've seen that there is some early recruiting that happens where they open up opportunities early. And it just kind of, I think the best way to describe it is you can drop rather early and not hear anything until November. You can drop in September and hear something in January. And so I would just say that the cycle is ongoing. And so it's great if you've been meeting with folks over the summer. And I know that coaches, I should say, and I know that we have some rising second years on the call that can kind of talk about their timeline. It might have looked different. And I think the more that you engage with second years, you'll have a better idea of sort of where tech sits within all of the recruiting timeline overall.
Great. So clear as mud. It just depends, right? So lots of questions, I think, but I think we'll hear from our 2 second years who will help us out a little bit with that and their process. So I took a look in 1220 at one of our current rising second years, just to kind of give you an idea. And this will vary from student to student and industry to industry, but just want you to start to think about what the recruiting process might look like for you. So thinking about the variety of different ways that you can connect with employers and prepare yourself for this process. So this student in particular attended 16 company information sessions and coffee chats, had over 25 networking calls, attended 7 prep events that the CMC hosted, 10 student club events, and 6 coaching appointments. I'd be curious to see what our panelists think of this number, if it's higher or lower in a variety of different spaces. But what we do want to emphasize here is that it's busy. The fall is busy, and it's a time commitment to think about and to plan ahead for. And this can look wildly different between students and industries too. So just want you to prepare for what the fall might look like for you, and start to think about kind of wrapping your head around all the ways that you will engage with our office and with employers, and kind of continue down this recruiting path, essentially. And then hopefully you've also seen this slide before too. I'm going to make a plug here for a session that Heather and her team is leading. I think it's next week, August 3rd. If you're not feeling great about using 1220, that's our recruiting platform that kind of is under the umbrella of all of this. Please take a look in 1220 and register for that event so that you can understand. Next week, you will start to have full access and you'll be able to see a whole lot more and do a whole lot more within 1220. And it's just such an important tool. So if you're not feeling great about it, please sign up for that event so that you can know how to use all these resources that are in here. So you can see there's a lot of different ways that you will connect with our office and a lot of different resources that we have. And just to make another plug, if you haven't had your resume review done, you can schedule that appointment in 1220. So if you go into the resource library, you can look at the Owen resume template and start to put your resume into that template, and then schedule an appointment with an MBA coach. So with me, or with Emily, or with Courtney, or with Sandy. And we are excited to help you get your resume ready to go so that you're prepared for recruiting. Once you get here in August, it's so busy. So we think the summer is a great time to do that. So while you have a little bit of time between now and when orientation starts, we would encourage you to schedule your appointment if you haven't done so already. And also always be looking at this events tab as well, so that you are in the know of what's happening, and that is updated frequently. So again, this is just another information about scheduling your resume review. Okay, so just two more quick things here I want to mention. Thinking about big picture career success, which is hopefully why you are enrolling in this MBA program. Step one would be really starting early what you're doing, because you're here and you're thinking about these things and you're asking these questions. So, for those of you that are still in that career exploration phase, that's great. It's a great place to be. It's a popular place to be, but start to think about these things, start to look at position descriptions, start to talk to second years when you arrive on campus. What was their recruiting experience like? Make sure you're doing your orientation or your resume review before orientation. Start to, brush up on your LinkedIn if you haven't done that. The second step here is be prepared. There are so many resources available to you, but you need to be prepared to take advantage of them. And also kind of be prepared to talk about the skills that you bring to the table when you're meeting with employers. So starting to think about what are the skills that you have and how would you transfer those? How would you talk about them to a recruiter? What are the skills that maybe you're missing or you need to improve on? How can you do that through involvement or courses or whatnot? And then also be adaptable. I think that's something that we're really pushing this year, since it was a weird market last year. We want you to have a backup plan and kind of think about being open and flexible. I think that's going to be where we'll see a lot of success with our students. So starting this process early and thinking about all these things early is an important piece of that puzzle. And then just, know that this is a difficult process too, right? You're not doing it alone. You're doing it with many resources, but just remember, if you haven't been back to school in a while, there's time management. So what does that look like? How do I, build in time to do my homework, to be involved as a student, to connect with people? And also there's a lot of recruiting events going on. So how do you navigate that? And, deciding who to talk to, when to talk to them, which event to go to. And also some of those do require some heavy networking. So that takes time as well. And then, especially with tech, thinking about what are the technical specific interviews that I have to prepare for, and learning that material and being ready to do that. We provide a lot of resources for that, but there's also work to be done on your own as well. And then also just knowing that there are things outside of your control, right? We don't always know the company timelines and what that looks like, as Heather was mentioning. Sometimes we'll be doing in-person recruiting. Sometimes it will be virtual. So being prepared and ready to pivot on that. And then also just whatever's happening in the economy can impact that as well. So we just want you to, prepare and think ahead and be ready to kind of pivot as needed this year. So and with that, I think that is sort of a quick and dirty overview, but most importantly, we have our wonderful second years here with us, Abhishek and Garrett. Thank you so much for joining us today. Maybe we could just kick it off if you guys would like to do a little introduction. I've got a couple of questions prepared for you all, but then I really want to save time for questions from the attendees that are here today. So if you want to put a question in the chat, or you can unmute after a few minutes here of our chatting, and then we'll go from there. So Abhishek and Garrett, if you could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your background, what brought you to Owen, where you are now, what you're working on, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I see you're on mute, Abhishek. I can go first. Yeah, so my name's Garrett Johnston. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. I did my undergrad at University of Colorado in Boulder. I worked for about 3.5 years, almost 4 years before coming to Owen. I started at a company called Aero Electronics, who's a big electronics components distributor. I was working on our cloud team, so distributing for some of the major cloud providers. And then I got into a product management role there at Aero, really liked product management, and then went and worked in a different product manager role at Charter Communications, or Spectrum, the big internet cable provider, and really just kind of aligned with the product management role. I kind of knew that that's what I wanted to do, and it seemed like an MBA was a really good way to sort of accelerate that career path. I had my eyes set on Vanderbilt because it's a good school and I have a lot of family in Nashville. So I decided to apply to one school. I applied to Vanderbilt, got into Owen, and obviously, ended up attending, and it's been an awesome experience. I, through recruiting that we'll get into more, ended up at Amazon. So I'm in Seattle this summer. doing a product management internship on our pricing team. So I can get more into this if that's helpful, but we basically just own the pricing roadmap for CPG in Amazon.com. So I'm working on a project that's kind of making a recommendation about the overarching pricing strategy that we have. It's kind of around, without getting into too much detail, how do we modify our pricing strategy and our competitor matching strategy in a way that we're offering low prices to our customers without over investing on price and still building price perception, which is like the North Star goal that we have on our team. So that's a little intro on me. I'll let you go ahead, Abhishek.
Sure, Garrett. Hi, guys. I'm Abhishek. I grew up in Mumbai, India, and I'm a computer science engineer. I worked in the tech industry for about 6 years. I was on the software engineering side and was later promoted to tech lead before coming to Owen. And why Owen? So that's interesting because when you're on the hunt for different schools, you speak with the students, and I connected most with the Owen students and alums. And the small cohort size definitely helped because you want to form a strong network rather than have a large network that's not very close knit. So by the end of year one, you will know everyone in your cohort. So Garrett and I had been recruiting together and we've shared our journeys, and most of us have this very strong bond, and that is what you will get out of the Owen network. And currently I'm interning at Google at their headquarters in Mountain View, California. And I'm a product technology manager intern. And what this means is it's a mix of both technical and strategy roles. So I'm working particularly in Google Shopping, wherein I'm helping automate the entire vendor onboarding process for Google Shopping. So just trying to find avenues where you can take a leadership role and say that, hey, can we reduce the timeline to onboard the merchant from, say, 2 weeks to 2 days by implementing certain strategies? And at the same time, you're collaborating with many stakeholders, the product team, the engineering team. And my host sits in Zurich, so there's a time zone difference as well. But at the same time, there's a lot to learn in this particular scenario because it's been 8 weeks already into the internship, and I feel, okay, time has flown by and the growth has been exponential.
Oh, that's great. So good to hear. I can't believe it's been 8 weeks already. That's crazy. Where did the summer go? Also, I just want to say thank you both. I know you are in the middle of your workday, and I really appreciate you joining us. This is wonderful. So thank you. So thanks for those intros. Now I'm curious to hear just a little bit more about the details of your kind of career exploration. It sounds like both of you were kind of coming in intentionally with tech in mind, but what did your fall kind of look like, and summer, kind of going into the program to prepare for recruiting for the fall?
Yeah, so I can start again. I sort of mentioned that I knew I wanted to do product management when I came to Vanderbilt, but even given that, being in an MBA program with so many other students kind of in the same boat, it's such a kind of like scope out what else is out there. So I didn't want to get too close-minded around product management, kind of wanted to keep the door open a little bit to other opportunities and just see what else was out there. I mean, especially given the environment that you mentioned, Kathleen, where like we were seeing tech companies laying off a bunch of people, they were hiring freezes. It was a little bit unclear what was going to be happening in terms of hiring for internships and just hiring in general. So I did a lot of going to info sessions. The Career Management Center does a really good job of like scheduling slots where you can have coffee chats with usually Vandy or Owen alum within companies, and just kind of explore and learn more about companies and just make connections and get a feel for what's out there. So I did a lot of that and ended up applying to a pretty broad range of companies and interviewing with, within some different functions, not just PM, which I'm glad that I did and got some exposure to that, but it ended up working to do PM at Amazon. So I decided to kind of stick with the original plan and go that direction. I'm not sure if that answers all of your question, but that was kind of my approach.
Great.
I had a very similar approach to that of Garrett. So coming into B school, you're exposed to so many different functions, consulting, IB, and of course tech. My head was set on tech, but as the environment was changing, I had to put my eggs in different baskets. So I did recruit for consulting as well. I felt that when you're preparing for those recruitment sessions, it does prepare you overall because there are a lot of transferable skills that applies to tech interviews and consulting interviews. So just because consulting came early in the timeline, I think that actually helped me prepare better for the tech interviews that were to follow. So I would say diversify the portfolio and see what the environment is like and network with people, because Vandy alums are really helpful. Like I'm going to meet a Vandy alum today at Google as well. So they're fantastic. And if you approach them, they're more likely to help you out. Not just Owen, but even Greater Vanderbilt.
That's great. I love that. I love that you both kind of came in with a specific goal, but also were open and flexible. I think that's great advice. So speaking of networking, Abhishek, can you speak a little bit more about what that looked like for you, what your approach was, as you were targeting tech firms, and what your experience was when going about networking?
Sure. Networking is one of the most daunting things that I have experienced. Not going to lie, because I think soft skills was one of the things that I wanted to gain out of the Vandy MBA. And initially, the second years really help you with those coffee chats, like get the confidence before you actually speak with the recruiters and people in industry. How I approached it is 1220. There are a list of resources that 1220 offers. And as I said earlier, the Vandy alums are really helpful, be it consulting, be it tech. You just need to reach out to them and they're happy to set a time. And secondly, apart from Vandy alums, you can leverage LinkedIn. So I think the CMC organizes LinkedIn guys session. Make sure that you attend that, because cold messaging, cold emailing really helps. Like even if you draft 20 emails, if 2 reply, that's for a good cause, because then they're willing to sponsor you and get your foot in the door for these companies, which is most important.
Yeah, I approached it in a pretty similar way. I would say I started in 1220, see what's kind of being offered there. And there's a lot of opportunities to meet people from 1220 and schedule coffee chats, like we mentioned. And then if you don't kind of see the companies that you're interested in, and by the way, I would recommend, like, maybe even now start getting kind of a list of companies together that you're interested in and you think you might want to apply to, and if you'd be interested in working an internship with them over the summer, get those companies together, and then you can start trying to scope out what who's available to network with within those companies, and moving from 1220 into LinkedIn, like Abhishek mentioned, it's really easy to go find Owen alum, and I actually found Owen alum to be very responsive and super willing to network, and just like, if you just ask for 15 minutes on their calendar to learn about what they do, and if you kind of approach it from more of like an exploratory approach of just, I'm trying to learn more, instead of like, how can you help me get a job? I think that's the right way to do it. And it's a good way to just learn more about what's out there. But I think also in general, in tech, the networking is really good for learning more about what's out there. I think the barrier, or like the requirements around networking, are a little bit lower in tech than in something like consulting, where it's like you have to build connections. You're not going to get an interview or an offer without building a bunch of connections within the office. Tech, it's more of a nice to have, but super helpful the more you can do it, I would say.
That's great advice. I love that. And speaking of the LinkedIn, guys, that session happened last week and we did record it. So if you missed it, check our YouTube channel or check in Teams too. I think it's posted there. So I'd love to hear a little bit more now about what you guys are working on this summer in a little bit more detail. Like, what is it like working at Google, working at Amazon? What was onboarding like? What was, is there a cohort model to the MBA interns? what are some projects that have been really cool? What have you loved the most about it? So love to hear a little bit more detail there.
Sure, I can go first if you don't mind, Darren.
Yeah.
When I came to Vandy, I remember telling Sandy that, hey, I want to be a product manager at Google. And thankfully that worked out well. And it's actually been a dream company, and for multiple reasons. Firstly, the people out here are very, very helpful, and they have a very good work-life balance. Like at 4 o'clock, the office is empty, and they really enjoy the California summer. But at the same time, the 12 weeks that were prepared for me, they have weekly milestones, they have weekly catch-ups. And at any point, if I approach anyone in the team, they're really helpful in talking about what they have achieved, what got them here, and where they want to go. In terms of resources, Google does provide everything, like simple things. Like if you want to speak with the other interns, there are many socials that are organized. You're not just talking to the other MBA interns, you're talking to undergrads, then sophomore interns. There's a whole cohort of us. Then secondly, when you want to network, they have something like Coffee Ninja, where you can simply schedule chats, you can have lunches, and because you're an intern, the people out here are willing to help. And it's not just L4 or L5. You can even have lunch with the director. Like the first weekend, I remember meeting my team with the director, where I was introduced to the team, and that really felt special. And the culture is that accommodating, and it comes from top, that hey, you, as long as you enjoy the work, have a good work-life balance, we'll make sure that you have a great internship. And at the same time, I know my manager told me that, hey, if you want to check out other roles, please feel free to reach out, and we'll provide you the resources. And lastly, Google also has their own learning platforms where you can get certifications, you can learn about, say, simply how to learn about your own finance or project management, and these all get credited on LinkedIn. So in terms of resources, these are the things that I can think about right now. If there are more, I'll definitely ping it to Kathleen so that she can spread it out. Over to you, Garrett.
Yeah, cool. I would say mine is similar in some ways, different in a lot of ways than what you just described, Abhishek. And we have from Owen, we have I don't know, I think it's like 6 or 7 people at Amazon maybe, and out of those, there's 3 others in Seattle, and we met up a few times and talked about our experiences, and it's been different for each of us a little bit. So I'll talk through mine, and it's just different depending on which role you're in and what team you're on. But my experience was you get to Amazon, you start going through some everything's super well structured, very prescribed on how you get onboarded, learn about the business. There's all these training videos, and you do that for about your first week. And then they give you your project in writing, at least for myself. And then they kind of just let you run with it and see how you're going to approach it. And Kathleen, you mentioned this a little bit. I think they really want to see how you're going to kind of operate through ambiguity. So I really got virtually no direction from leadership on how to start or what to do. So it was just about going out and trying to find the right people to talk to. I would get leads on who had what information, go out, start scheduling meetings, try to scope out the work that's going to be required to get to the final deliverable. And then it's just climbing a learning curve and trying to put your project together kind of as you go, and talking to people as much as possible. I will say also, Abhishek mentioned this, as an intern, everybody's super willing to meet with you. They're willing to kind of contribute to your project in any way that they can, and be just like a resource and help you build your network within the company. So that's been awesome. There are a bunch of intern events here in Seattle, so an opportunity to meet other MBA interns as well as undergrad interns. But overall, I would say it's you kind of make of it what you will with this internship at Amazon. You can approach it any way you like. You can kind of put in as much work as you like. Nobody's holding your hand. It's all kind of up to you to make the most of it. So that's that's kind of been my experience so far.
That's great.
Just to add to that, sorry, Kathleen, I missed one point. The project that has been allocated to the other MBA interns actually has a business impact. So by the end of it, there is a value add to the company. It's not just any intern project. It's you're working towards something that the company really looks for. So I don't know if that's the case for Garrett as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Abhishek. I know that the requirements for these teams within Amazon to get an intern, especially this year where they had fewer openings, was they had to have a problem that was really like a prominent issue that was being seen by eyes, pretty high up within the organization. So the recommendation around pricing is something that, they might actually use or go in a direction that aligns somewhat to the recommendation. It's a pretty high impact project, and that definitely makes it more fulfilling, and it makes it more exciting for sure, and worth all the extra work.
That's great. Sounds like you both had a great summer so far, which is wonderful. I would love to hear now. I just have two more questions and I'm opening it up. So hopefully you're all thinking of your questions. But you were in the seats of these incoming students just a year ago. So anything that you wish you knew a year ago at this time that you'd like to share with these students who are getting ready to either move here or get started? Orientation just a couple weeks away.
So one thing that I guess I wish I'd probably done a little bit sooner. You guys are coming, I think this meeting is a little bit later in the summer than it was for us last year. I'm not sure about that actually, but what I wish I'd done when I was still working, if you guys are still working or you guys are just fresh out of, leaving your jobs to start school, you guys are going to need to be able to like tell stories in your interviews, but the behavioral side of the interviews, and you're going to need to be able to back it up with data. I wish that I had just written everything down when it was more fresh in my mind about what I'd done, and when I still had access to the data that I could use to kind of quantify the impact and things like that. So I would recommend just, you kind of have an idea probably of the questions you're going to get asked in a behavioral interview. And if not, I actually have like a whole list of questions that I use to prep for my interviews, and it was very relevant and helpful. And I'm totally happy to send that list to anybody. And it was very relevant for the Amazon interview particularly. So hit me up. I'm willing to share that for sure. But if you guys can start kind of just writing out your answers to these questions now, and then start kind of prepping and going through your stories and, talking out loud and getting them into a place where you can speak very concisely and clearly about what you've done in your different roles, that's going to save you a lot of time and be super helpful, I think. So that's one thing.
Just to add to Garrett's point, when you come to Vanderbilt in Mod 1, there's a lot of information thrown at you. So you'll want to be cognizant about how to prioritize social time, academics, and recruiting. So try to get as much out of the way, something like a resume or a cover letter over the summer, so that you will just have to refine them once you're actually recruiting and won't have to put your head or effort into it. So you have all the time right now, do your exploration, speak with the current students because they're more than willing to talk to you about your likes. So make use of the summer. You're a Vandy student the moment you get an admit. It's not when you enter Vanderbilt physically.
Great advice, both of you. Wonderful. And then lastly, I'd love for the two of you, since I think you're both on the leadership of the Tech Club, just to share a little bit more about that and how you got involved and how these students might be able to get involved and what that looks like throughout the year. So if either of you want to talk about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can go ahead, Abhishek. So both of us were in the Tech Club last year. I think just, out of our interest in tech, we joined the Tech Club. It actually ended up being, I think, the second largest club out of all the clubs. We had good membership last year, and we definitely hope to continue that this year. I guess the intro that you guys will have to the club and all clubs, I think there's a club fair. Maybe you guys could confirm this, Kathleen, but there's a club fair in Mod 1, I think, where you guys can go around and talk to the different, the boards of each club and kind of learn what they're about and what kind of events they're going to be having. But just as kind of an intro, and we haven't completely like planned out a calendar at this point or anything, but in general, we have speakers come who are, you know, Owen alum who can kind of speak to their experiences within different tech companies and kind of talk through their journeys and let us ask questions and get a feel for how they've gotten to where they are. We'll do a lot with interview prep and just workshopping how to go about the recruiting process. And I think that's super helpful as incoming first years to get some perspectives from people who had to do what you guys are going to be doing just a year before. So that's another thing that we'll do. So if you have any interest in tech at all, I would definitely recommend joining. You can come to whatever you want to come to and not come to the events that you don't want to come to. But it's worth joining, I think. And we'll have some interesting speakers come. Like last year we had, when the whole generative AI thing started taking off with ChatGPT, we had somebody come in and talk about the impact of generative AI and these large language models in different workplaces and the implications on education and everything. So interesting topics as well. That's kind of what we're about in the Tech Club. I don't know, Abhishek, if you have anything else you want to add to that.
I think, Garrett, you covered most of it. One thing is something that Kathleen mentioned earlier, that tech is a big industry with many different roles. So I believe the tech industry our tech club also touched upon that. Like there were different sessions on, say, there's a panel on product management, there was a panel on program management, and even the HR roles. So these can be discovered through the Tech Club because we invite speakers, as Garrett said, and even the current second years would be more than willing to help you all out through the Tech Club.
Great, thank you. And yes, there is a club fair, I think the first week of class, so you'll all be invited to that and you'll get more information on that for sure. So there is a question in the chat from David. So considering the competitive nature of PM roles in the current market, did you have multiple PM internship offers, or were Google and Amazon your only offers?
Yeah, it was definitely competitive last year. I think fewer openings maybe than in years previous. So to answer the question, I had just had Amazon, and then after I got that offer, I ended up withdrawing from other interview processes. So I was still interviewing for some other roles, but I just had one offer.
Very similar to Garrett. So I interviewed with both Amazon and Google. Amazon was for their PM technical role. However, I was waitlisted from Amazon, and until then the Google offer had come in and I had signed there. So I withdrew from Amazon later on.
Great. And then Connor just asked, do you have any flexibility when it came to your office locations? Did you apply specifically to, Seattle, or overall to the company and then get placed?
So for Amazon, you go through the interview process, you apply, you state your interest in where you want to go, you can rank locations, and then they assign you. And that's just kind of how it goes. I think for full-time offers, it's a little bit different. You probably get a little bit more input into where you want to end up but for the internship, you can try to influence them with your ranking locations.
For Google, it was something different because for that particular role, they said that, hey, it's only New York and Mountain View that have these offers or locations. And if there's any you want to choose, you could go for that. So I chose Mountain View because it's the headquarters and I wanted to check out the West Coast.
Yeah, why not? Great. Who else has a question? Feel free to just unmute and shout it out or drop it in the chat. This is your chance. Garrett, was Seattle your #1 location? And do you remember what number it was on your list if it was number 1?
Yeah, so Seattle actually was #1 on my list. I have some family out here also, so that's why I chose Seattle. But I think, everybody from our class either ended up in Seattle or Nashville. So I don't know what goes into how they place you, but I think definitely most interns will end up in Seattle just because this is where we have like 50 offices out here. So most of the employees in the US are out here.
got a quick question. When you were interviewing, can you all talk about the months that you actually had interviews taking place? Like what that looked like from start to finish when you began interviewing?
Yeah, you can let you go first, Abhishek, if you want.
Okay, sure. So since I was recruiting for consulting as well, I remember my first interview was in December, just before the Christmas break. And then there were multiple interviews in January. My Amazon interview was in February. And the last interview with Google was in March first week. And that's when I heard back. I heard back after 4 to 5 business days. So that was quick.
I think mine was similar. I started submitting applications as early as like September, a lot in like October. And then maybe I think there was one interview before the Christmas break, but then as soon as Christmas break ended, that's like early January, that's when things really took off, and most interviews happened in January, February for me.
Can I ask a question about within these processes, both at Google and Amazon, did they use assessment tools as a part of the application process? And could you talk a little bit about what those were like?
Yeah, so for Amazon, they give you the first step before you get an interview is like an online assessment where they kind of test your just general problem solving skills, I guess I would say. Like you get some operations questions in there, you get some like, I can't even remember exactly. I want to almost say they were like puzzle type questions in there. It takes an hour or so. And that was the first step. And then after that, it was just 2 behavioral back-to-back 45-minute behavioral interviews for the PM position at Amazon. I know if you're doing the PMT interview with Amazon, the technical one, you do get a case question. And I know Abhishek went through that. And just to go along with that point, actually real quick, I want to say that Abhishek and I and a few other people who were recruiting for product management and knew we wanted to do product management, part of our interview prep was prepping for product case questions. I know consulting is very focused on prepping for the case interview. In product management, you can get those case interviews sometimes as well, particularly for the technical ones. So anyway, we used a book called Lewis Lynn's Decode and Conquer, and that was really helpful. We kind of like would set up sessions on the weekend and go through questions together and go through the book together and help review and practice casing together, really. And while, I actually only had one interview where I had a case question, it was helpful prep for sure. And I think for Abhishek, it probably paid off more, where I know you had more case questions, Abhishek, but I'll let you answer their question.
Oh, so I'm happy to talk both about Amazon and Google. So other than the behavioral questions in the Amazon interview, I was asked a case question. It was probably the last 7 to 8 minutes of the interview. And I forgot there was a term for Amazon interviews, right? A bar raiser. So the bar raiser actually asked me that case interview, and I feel that went okay, not the best, but I felt that the prep that we had done was actually coming to fruition that time. And talking about the Google interview, I did not have any assessment. So how it worked is I put in my application by early November, and around mid of February, a recruiter reached out and asked me to fill in a survey about what kind of roles that I'll be interested in. And once I filled that out, within 4 hours, they kind of matched me to a role and said, hey, do you want to interview for this particular product technology manager intern role? This is the job description, and this is a fairly technical role, and will you be comfortable doing it? So once you given the response, they'll schedule an interview. And during the interview, it was a mix of both technical questions and behavioral. So I remember they asked me general business knowledge about, say, the Chrome platform, that why should Google invest in Chrome if it's a free tool? So this was one of the questions, and there were many on similar lines. They asked me to actually code. That is just specific for my role. It wasn't the same for other MBA interns. And from there onward, I had 2 rounds, 1 hour each. And they were really willing to answer your questions towards the end. So I had a good 20 minutes of a coffee chat with them, which actually helped me learn more about the role, since it was kind of ambiguous in the job description. And right now I'm still learning about the role, and going forward, I'll be making a decision about continuing or no. Yeah, that's about it.
Great. Thank you both for those really helpful insights and for the Lewis Lynn info, that book title. And Lewis is also going to be leading a workshop at the end of August, I believe. So you can register for that if you're interested.
Cool.
Any other questions from anyone, or Abhishek and Garrett, any other things that we didn't touch on today in our questions that you would like to share?
Not too much more. I think we covered a lot. I would just say, we talked about it a little bit, but mod 1 kind of comes at you fast. It's going to be a good amount of work. It's more than anything, it's just like just a change of pace compared to what you're used to if you've been working 40-hour full-time weeks or more or whatever. It's easier said than done, I guess. Just try not to let yourselves get too overwhelmed with it. Have fun with it. Have fun with your classmates, getting to know everybody. Don't take it too seriously. We're all here to help in any way that we can, so just use your resources and have fun. That's the only thing I guess I would say here.
Can't agree more. Just have fun with it. And there's a lot of introspection, a lot of learning about yourself throughout the process. And don't get overwhelmed. I know it's easier said than done, but yeah, just take it at your own pace and put in the effort in the right amount in different places.
I love that. Very true. It is a busy time of year, but I think knowing what resources you have, all of the resources that you have, taking advantage of them, and just time management is a huge one. And once you figure that out, you can do it all. So, well, I don't see any additional questions in the chat. Abhishek and Garrett, I just want to thank you both so much for taking time out of your internship day to join us and to share these really helpful insights. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I would imagine that you'd be willing to connect with anyone. So if you want to drop your LinkedIn profile or your email in the chat, whatever you prefer, if anybody has any questions that they'd like to follow up after this event. But I learned a lot from you both today, and I know everyone else did here as well. So thank you both for joining us, and thank you everyone for being a part of this call, and enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are. And we can't wait to see you on campus soon. So thanks everyone.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you both.